This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Well, hello there, Pacer Nation, and welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. And joining Facci and I on today's episode is Kevin Bowen from 107.5, The Fan, the voice of the morning show. I guess I got to say that you've been there the longest, so you get the title of the voice. It is KB. Kevin, what's up, man? How you doing?
Well, thank you to Jeff Ricker. Thank you to James Boyd, our fellow co-host. I don't want this clipped out. Mark Dykton, excellent producer, but nonetheless, thrilled to join you guys, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get right into it. A lot of places we could go, but I texted you. I wanted to touch on Tyrese Haliburton's interview with Pat McAfee. Felt like it was really good stuff. Tyrese was pretty candid about some things, but were there any major takeaways, or was there anything that stood out to you from what Tyrese and Pat talked about?
Boy, Tyrese is so good in front of the mic. I mean, that's just my general thought, I guess. Just in whatever's thrown his way, on the floor, off the floor. I thought the Miles answer was, exactly what you would want from your star in a public setting. I'd be curious, behind the scenes when that game pops up on the schedule, how it might sound a little differently. But nonetheless, I think that's what you want from, a player like that. And obviously the rehab tidbits I find interesting just because, I think it lets you a little bit in into kind of where he is at, just like the little hey, Kevin Durant visit me at my home. We've already heard about the Tatum stuff and, obviously their rehab schedules are a little bit similar. But I just enjoy all of that. I think it's a peek behind the curtain. And, the unique thing about the NBA offseason is, that might be the only time we hear from Tyrese until what? Training camp, and then who knows how the Pacers will handle him from a media availability standpoint. So, I just thought, for an hour, you got a lot there. And of course, not all basketball, but, and then just him walking through the finals and, giving kind of firsthand accounts of how he felt, after game 2, and we saw the video walking off the podium, and then game 5, and then, for him to say he felt great after 6. I mean, I remember doing a show that Friday morning and thought, could you have had a better game 6 result? Like, I never felt like he was favoring anything. He only played 23 minutes. And then to hear his words kind of mimic that as well, boy, that probably just kind of added to the sting of game 7, honestly, if we needed any more reason to add to it.
Going back to the comments on Miles, I felt like Haliburton wrapped up his answer on Miles Turner in about 5 to 10 seconds flat. Just like you said, great answer from the face of your franchise. Kept it professional. No shade thrown. No talks about grass and what color it might be or anything of the sort. Just really said, hey, Miles had to do what he had to do. We're focused on our guys. Do you think there's any part of it of maybe what was it said might have been pretty loud in terms of there wasn't a lot of emotion or anything? And maybe sometimes when people aren't emotional like that, it means that, hey, you know what? Things might have been done in a little bit of an unfavorable way, perhaps on Miles' side.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a competitive spirit, there has to be some of that. Now, I also think we sit in a little bit of a different world where, we don't know what free agency is like. We don't know what being a professional athlete, in Miles' case, again, he was drafted here. And, from an NBA world, you are with that drafted team, or you could be, longer than the NFL world, for example. So I do think there is a little bit of wait a minute, yes, he is a free agent. He can do that. But, do we felt like, we were done dirty? And, there is a, do you just group all Pacers together? Organizationally, at times, Miles, understandably, has been treated like a little bit of the stepchild. And again, I get that from a Pacers standpoint. But, if I'm Miles and then all of a sudden you show up to the dance and the girl that, never wanted to dance with you all of a sudden says she wants to dance with you, you might, all of a sudden be peacock strutting a little bit out there to the floor. And clearly he is with some of his comments here. So, again, I think part of it, Facci, just comes back to what, I was saying, when that game gets circled on the calendar, that will be, I think, of a different feel inside that locker room. And honestly, I think it'll be one of the more anticipated regular season games in quite a while for different reasons than just, in-season tournament and, things like that.
I'll be honest. I don't think Miles is just dancing with any old girl, though. He's dancing with, his former girl's biggest rivals. So I think that's what makes it interesting, too. But just to go on a little bit of a lighthearted side of things, the John Haliburton segment was probably some of the best television I've seen in a while. I mean, I laughed so hard at his commentary and how Pat was just kind of riling him up and the guys are riling him up. The fact that this man is that addicted to mashed potatoes, that had me rolling. And then the comments that Pat and all the guys there were just saying about the Giannis thing and getting him going, and Tyrese is just saying next segment, next question. I mean, just having a guy like Papa Haliburton there as well. Like, what did you think about that segment and anything else that I missed that was fun from that?
I'd love to have a camera on Pacers PR when John Haliburton came, out in the old Thunderdome, thinking, "Oh no, here we go again," of him making the media rounds the day after the Giannis thing went down. My first takeaway was, how does a man eat that many mashed potatoes and look like that? I mean, hell, I would love to consume the amount of mashed potatoes he is eating. As a golfer, I thoroughly enjoyed, all of a sudden acting like he was like Scotty Scheffler out there for a brief second. So that was awesome for me. And he's just, I remember I ran into him and Brenda downtown. This is probably 2 or 3 years ago. And, I don't want to say anything too much. I just kind of offered a thanks of like, and you know what, honestly, the Turner parents are probably in this camp as well. I mean, you don't see professional athletes. And again, the NBA world, I think, is different because, Miles Casey was 19 when he got drafted here, 20 when he got drafted here. And Ty was still pretty young when he got traded here. I mean, they have been so ingrained into being front and center. And, yes, John Haliburton is a different breed, but, until the Giannis moment, it's not like the dude was, whatever, LeVar Ball. So I enjoyed it. I thought it went about as far as it needed to go, because I don't think we probably need to have John Haliburton, 24/7, 365. But for July 20, whatever it was, to get a little John Haliburton in my life, I was like, you know what? This is a nice summer activity for me right here.
Yeah, definitely provides entertainment, time in, time out. Always can light up a smile on anyone, that John Haliburton. But I think for, going back to kind of the rehab for Haliburton, he gave us a step-by-step, 4 weeks post-surgery, mentioned that he's starting to put like 50% of his body weight on his crutches, said by about 7 to 8 weeks, he should be in a walking boot off the scooter. I think those are all, good signs. But, what does it mean that maybe, the fact that it feels like guys like Kevin Durant checked on him, someone who had Achilles surgery and has had a successful, recovery from it. Obviously now, Boston Celtics have reached out with what's going on with Tatum. The Pacers have experience with Isaiah Jackson, James Wiseman. Does it feel like, hey, as bad as an Achilles tear is, maybe the Pacers do have the right resources around Haliburton and that rare ability where they've already ruled him out for next year. You're not going to rush him back. There is no what if maybe May or what if June or anything like that? Does it feel like, hey, this guy's going to be set up for a successful rehab where nobody has to worry about rushing him back compared to players of the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've handled it as well as they could have here in a month, just in saying, all right, take all of that off the table, like you just pointed out there. I think the Jackson and Wiseman thing, I know body types are different, but at least offers you some sort of, all right, we've thought about this for the last 6 or 7 months. We've seen how, our guys have progressed through it, maybe this tweak, that tweak, et cetera, et cetera. So I think all of that is beneficial. And, the whole, okay, is it 12 months? Is it 18 months? Jaleel Okafor, again, he's a different body type. Is it more of a 24-month thing? I do believe this with Ty, and I said this, kind of the day after he went down of, when Victor Oladipo got hurt on that weeknight against the Raptors, I thought that was career threatening for him. And unfortunately, I think it's kind of turned out to be that way.
Yeah.
Because he's such, necessary to be an explosive athlete. He's an undersized, streaky shooting guard. And Tyrese is not that. He's not undersized as a point guard, and he's not some streaky shooter. And he doesn't rely on living at the rim and needing that, again, explosive pop and burst. Again, he definitely needs, to get back to normal health, but I don't think his game is going to age poorly because of this Achilles. So I think all of that, again, is beneficial. It's still a serious injury, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to downplay that, but and I don't know if many people are living in this world, but I just don't live in a world of like, he's never going to be the same player. I felt that way about Victor. I just don't feel that way with Tyrese at all.
I want to move forward now with TJ McConnell, who wrote an awesome article in the Players Tribune. He said you think people would learn by now, but we're actually not done. A lot of people are writing the Pacers off, obviously, because of Haliburton getting hurt and Turner with his departure as well. But I just felt like McConnell shared such a great perspective in this article, and I was curious your thoughts on what TJ had to say in the Players Tribune.
Yeah, I thought something that kind of stood out to me, and this goes back to that scene, Game 7 post game, and again, he hit on this in the Players Tribune piece, and singling out Karen Atkinson and all of that. But that scene, and I felt this way before the end of Game 7, but I think it was kind of the cherry on top. To me, I think Pacers fans felt a gravitational pull towards this year's team, like watching a high school team make a run through the state tournament, or watching a college team make a run, maybe a mid-major team through their conference tournament, maybe win a game or two in the big tournament. It just felt like when that game ended, I mean, my wife, who's not the biggest sports fan in the world, I mean, she's crying when Tyrese gets hurt. She's crying at the end of Game 7. Like, there was just a high school collegiate feel to their run, and it was truly, again, movie-like. And I don't want to be too hyperbolic, but I genuinely mean it. And we were a family. I think TJ wrote those exact words, if I remember correctly, in the piece. So to hear it from him as well, I think it's just further confirmation that it had that feel to it, and that's special in professional sports. I don't think you get that. I don't think it's something that we should take for granted. I mean, we really saw a run that might be once in a lifetime type of run. And sure, the Pacers might win a title at some point, but to bring it like to Colts terms, which again, I know not everybody's a Colts fan that maybe listens to this, but like, when the Colts won the Super Bowl, the AFC Championship game was magical. They finally slayed the Patriots and this big historic comeback and all of that. But, the round before was a defensive slugfest. The wild card game, they kind of won going away. The Super Bowl kind of lacked climactic moments. Manning was just kind of okay in the game. It was a rainy game. Like Dominique Rhodes could have been the MVP. Again, it just, obviously you won the Super Bowl, but like it didn't have these like peak scenes where the Pacers run had all of these peak scenes. Now, of course, it didn't end like you wanted to, but still, off the floor, I think, they clearly felt that. And that's just not common in professional sports at all.
Yeah, this was cinema. This was a movie. This had, McConnell talks about all the comebacks and the game winners and trailing by 7 late, trailing by 9 late. Like anytime you wanted to count them out, they had this incredible comeback. Now, obviously, Haliburton's not going to be there next year. Miles Turner, we know, is not going to be there. The rest of the roster is. They brought back essentially, just about everybody on this roster. However, it's still going to be a year before Haliburton comes back. Do you feel they're going to keep this core mostly in place and let Haliburton return to what was the Pacers, or is it just inevitable? This is a business. You have to make changes. This team could look different, maybe even very different by the time Haliburton returns.
Perfect question. I assume it will mostly stay the same, but I don't think it's like this grand slam dunk as I sit here and we have this conversation. Obviously, Turner is the big, we know, missing piece now moving forward, and we'll see what else. I think a weird thing about this upcoming season is, you're asking a lot of these guys to play in roles that theoretically they won't be in when Haliburton gets back. And so, how does that go? Like Andrew Nembhard, do we evaluate him differently this season? I mean, he's got the ball for 82 nights out of the year. Is that like, that to me is odd. Like, I mean, how do you view that? Or does it you just say, highs and lows as a point guard, he'll go back to being the 2 guard and everything will be the same? Obviously, Benedict Mathurin, assuming he is the starting 2 guard, which Chad Buchanan, certainly with you guys, didn't act like that was some, backboard slap, slam dunk by any means either. So, Mathurin contractually, are you paying him for what he's going to be this season? Or do you pay him to be back in that role of, probably more of a lead guy, but still, primarily coming off the bench? And Alex, you and I hit on this when you hopped on our show earlier this week. Siakam, Chad made that pretty clear. And they did manage him, at times this past season. yes, he's a great self-creator and so gifted offensively, but you're going to ask more of him. So I don't know. It's just such a fascinating upcoming year in that I think we'll have to be reminded. And you said some quote that I jotted down, Alex. I'm trying to think of exactly what you said about Tyrese Haliburton, but like Tyrese is such a table setter for so many of these guys, whether we see it tangibly with an assist or we don't. And you said something like, I don't know how they're going to play Haliburton basketball maybe without Haliburton, or like something along those lines. And like, yeah, and to me, it really struck me of like, yeah, I mean, like, it's just going to be different. And sure, they can have great hunger and hustle and togetherness and try to move the basketball around, but he just does so much that's obvious in a 20 and 10 night, but he also does a whole lot even that doesn't show up there. So I don't know. I guess I'm talking a little bit, kind of ranting here, but I assume the personnel will largely stay the same, but assuming in the NBA is probably a dumb exercise.
I mean, it's fair. The whole thing with Haliburton, and I think I might have mentioned this on the radio too, it's just he draws so much attention. And now that's going to be focused on who next. And I think, does Siakam end up getting more attention from the defense going up against the Pacers? Probably.
Right.
How is Nembhard guarded, differently? Is Mathurin guarded differently? Because Haliburton is like, you got guys guarding him at half court. Like they're playing 4-on-4 sometimes, just trying to get him out of the play because he's so impactful offensively. And that's why I'm saying like they can't play Haliburton basketball without Haliburton, or how are they going to do that? This is where I think Rick Carlisle is probably going to have to step in and have one of those masterclass coaching seasons, because they're probably not going to be able to play the same way. But I think Rick's up for that challenge. And Rick is a coach that has not been calling plays the last couple of years. I think we see a little bit more of a heavy dose of Rick Carlisle calling plays and kind of controlling the offense a little bit more. I know he'll trust Nembhard to a certain degree, but I think Haliburton's just on a different level as a passer. And so I think it'll also ease the load a little bit for Nembhard to kind of have someone else, maybe Carlisle, kind of plays a little more of that table setter for them, because they're going to need actions to get this offense going, because they're not going to have the same personnel out there they had last year.
Well, and then also too, just specifically with Nembhard, what are you going to ask of him at the other end of the floor?
Yeah.
Do you even touch the type of defensive responsibility?
Let me cut you off for just a quick second, because Caitlin Cooper talked about this just quickly on her podcast that she put out today, and she said, "Who's going to play Nembhard who's going to play the Nembhard role next year?" Sure. And I thought that's a great question, because it's like you can't ask him to play that defensive level every night while doing the same thing offensively.
No, hell no, not at all. I mean, I felt at times when Tyrese was banged up in the finals, it never got to that point. But I'm like, wait a minute, if you need Nembhard to go back to Game 3, Game 4 of the Celtics series a year prior, you weren't saying go guard Shea for 40 minutes. So, that's just another wrinkle to next year as well. So again, you might manufacture some things offensively, but who's your, maybe Mathurin takes on more of a scoring role. Okay, great. Who's the Mathurin of the defense though? Mm-hmm. It's probably not him. Like, I mean, who, does Nesmith take on even more of it? Again, when you're facing some of the Cavs guards or the Knicks, are all those assignments going to fall on him? So boy, it's just, it'll be entertaining, but it'll be so different in the entertaining world just of how it's all going to play out.
It will. And as much as I say, it's not a gap year, don't count us out and this and that, this is also a really good opportunity to get some player development in. This team is good enough to keep pushing forward and maybe be a playoff team, maybe win a playoff series if everything goes right. But what about your Jarris Walkers, and players that you really want to get the verdict on? This is year 3, Jarris. How much do you think the Pacers should prioritize? No, we're going to continue to push forward and win as many games as possible, versus, hey, look, let's try and do what we can, win as many games, but also get final answers on Jarris Walkers and maybe Ben Shepherd as he heads into, basically the final year before restricted free agency. And then, maybe could you bring a Johnny Furphy forward and make him part of a rotation? So how much do you prioritize winning versus a little bit of both of the winning and development?
Yeah, it's certainly a thought that I've had, but I come back to the point of this. I think the theoretical tank lineup versus the win lineup looks pretty similar to me. Like I don't know who you would be playing in the win minutes, versus who you wouldn't be playing if you were all of a sudden going into tank mode. And I get that I'm speaking of, obviously in a big word when I say tank. I don't literally mean it. Again, TJ McConnell, I guess age-wise, he might fall into that boat. But, I mean, who's the third point guard that TJ McConnell's stunting minutes from? Like, I watched Cam Jones in college. I think he's a really nice guard. I don't think he's a point guard at this level. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you throw more point guard on his plate and see what happens. But still, I just don't. There's not a lot of blockage, I guess, in what I'm getting at. Maybe a point in time comes where, whatever, Obi, I'll throw out a name of just like, we don't really see maybe the future with him. Again, is he stunting? Is Walker a 4 all of a sudden? So, Walker and Furphy, exactly what the roles look like, how you give them minutes, certainly curious about. And no Pacer fan, I think, wants to truly hear this after what just happened. I mean, we are a month and a day from Game 7. But if you look at whatever, Golden State drafting Jordan Poole and helping him out to win a title at some point. If you remember, Denver and getting Michael Porter Jr. and that helping them win a title, or, certainly at a very high level, but Oklahoma City, late lottery and what they got with Jalen Williams. Like, if you do end the season with an upper teen pick and that all of a sudden becomes a key piece of the next Tyrese window, we might not be fans of it here in the next 8 months, but you'll celebrate it like no other 3-4 years down the road if that guy becomes a key ingredient to the next window. Because, if you look at it, we know that Turner's gone. So you're at least replacing one piece from the team that just got to the doorstep. Right now, we don't know exactly how that's going to look. Siakam, when Tyrese is 30, is probably not going to be playing, the role or maybe at all for you. So again, who kind of slides into these new sidekicks for Tyrese? I don't think the season is going to bottom out. I'd be genuinely surprised if they became a lottery team, but I also don't think it's the end of the world. And again, I know no one wants to hear that at all. And I get the lottery can be a crapshoot, Yeah. But if all of a sudden, and I know sports don't work this way, the NBA doesn't work this way, the draft doesn't work this way, but if for some way, shape, or form you told me this season ended with the Pacers acquiring, the next Miles Turner in next year's draft, oh boy, I might have to take a pen and see where that paper is and maybe sign on it if, I thought big picture. Now, again, a lot of people would say, hey, you can win and, whatever, draft and develop. Okay, that's fine. And sure, you could also try that as well. But they won't openly do that, and they shouldn't. But again, I don't think that's just the craziest thought or the worst result if this season were to go in a direction that, again, I don't think it'll go.
Last one for me, KB. I was just curious your thoughts on what Chad Buchanan had to say about Johnny Furphy, specifically comparing him to Ben Shepherd, and almost think he can basically do a lot of the same things Ben Shepherd does, but better. I was a little bit surprised to hear him just be so transparent about that, because if I'm Ben Shepherd, that's going to have to motivate me a lot to realize they kind of like this guy sitting behind me.
Well, I mean, you guys know this full well, and I know you asked, about where Cam Jones was in the draft board. I mean, they have loved Furphy from day one, and I'm talking scouting-wise. So, organizationally, they liked him before the draft. And then, what struck me about Furphy, first in Vegas, I'm talking Las Vegas, and then, when he did, get a cup of coffee here, is like, and I'm probably just doing the 6'8" white stereotype thing, but he does a lot of things that are not just what he did at Kansas, which was, mostly kind of just stand there and hope that, somebody throws it to him and hit an open shot. And so I guess that's kind of the Shepherd stuff that I think they're getting at, of he's trustworthy. He can do a lot of stuff that maybe might not show up in the box score. And we know this coaching staff likes that. Rick talks about Shepherd, in very, very high regard. So again, where do the minutes come from? What does that puzzle look like? If you're mapping out a 10 right now, it's just hard to find consistency for him. But if that jumper comes around, I understand where the intrigue is. It's just, okay, exactly where are all the puzzle pieces, fitting in for that. So, yeah, I mean, in a way, like, it's almost like Furphy is doing stuff that, like, I thought Jarris Walker would do a little bit more of in a way. And Walker probably has shown more like perimeter stuff that maybe I would have labeled Furphy doing. So it's just kind of odd how I've probably viewed those two early in their careers.
Yeah, for my last question that I got for you is, we obviously heard on the with Chad that he really didn't hand the starting 2 guard to Mathurin by any means. There was a lot of players that were listed in there, which obviously isn't a great sign for Bennedict Mathurin heading into, what would be, essentially a contract year. He's already extension eligible. If you're Bennedict Mathurin and you're not named the starter to start, does it feel like almost, all right, you know what? This is definitely going to be a situation that Indiana and the rest of the league is going to have to monitor around the trade deadline, because he wants to be paid like a starter, wants to be a starter, hasn't been vocal about that, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but we know the confidence that Mathurin has for himself. Do you think that could start to be a little bit of a crack in the armor of, hey, you know what, long term, that this might not be the best marriage?
I'm so confused on Mathurin. Like, is he really good? Is he just kind of good? Is he ready for this role? The role next year is theoretically, again, not what you're paying him for. Would someone pay him more to be in that role? If an extension was put in front of him, I could easily see him and his team saying no. So I just, boy, he's got to be up there in terms of athletes that we have just dissected to the nth degree in this market. And you guys know full well I've always been heavily in the Mathurin camp. There's times where I think we scrutinize him too much, and I get there's probably a line of like, wait, we think he can be more, that's why we scrutinize him so much. But I'm like, okay, again, how many people just come off the bench and score 20 plus points in 2 NBA Finals games? Like, there's just not many people that are that gifted and wired to do that. So I have no idea how it's going to play out, and I'm so intrigued, but again, so confused in exactly how it's going to go. There's so many signs and tea leaves that point to it not happening here. But then I also think back to our conversation of like, wait a minute, if this window is going to start with Haliburton age 27, boy, wouldn't you like that type of scoring piece to be there for you? So yeah, I and Chad's comments, I feel like put me even more into a tailspin with that. And I get they have wanted to publicly fire Bennedict up. I think that's been a lot of where these comments have come from, but still, I got no freaking idea. And I don't know, it stresses me out.
Especially if you're building a statue. I mean, that would stress me out too. So
I got way too much gray hair. I've already had a hair transplant. I can't be doing another one here. So, yeah. And again, even the finals, it's like, I mean, game 3, it's like him and McConnell crazy. And like, if for somehow game 7 would have gone differently, people are talking about Bennedict Mathurin in this town like they talk about any athlete. I mean, can you imagine if you win game 7 and this dude off the bench scores whatever, 24, 23? I mean, like, that's a movie. So it just, gosh, he is so, oh man, he's so wild and just, boy, I don't even know how to describe him anymore. Again, it stresses me out, and he stresses me out.
Yeah, I want to get people a little bit behind the scenes here of setting the pace, because we have our guest for our next episode sitting in the waiting room, Derek Schultz. And so I want to bring Derek on because I do have an important question to ask both Kevin and Derek. So this is a little bit behind the scenes. I know Derek's been waiting patiently, so I told him I was going to do this. Now, he might not be ready yet, so we'll have to wait and see. There he is. He's coming on, but we've got Derek Schultz and Kevin Bowen here joining us now. And I'm telling everybody, Derek, this is a behind the scenes type thing here because we're recording with you for the next episode tomorrow. But I got to ask you guys both this question. I'll start first with Kevin, then let Derek finish. Miles Turner put on his Twitter account, when y'all be on dates with your significant other, do you sit on the same side of the table or across from each other? So this is a great question to ask two married men. Kevin, go first.
Boy, this is dangerous. I hope my wife never comes across setting the pace. Not that I'm trying to, turn away any other additional listeners. I don't know if I've ever sat next to her on a date. I would say across the table every single time. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe that sums up where we're at from a marriage standpoint.
Derek?
Oh God, I was just worried when I saw Kevin that we'd have to start talking about Daniel Jones. Instead, we're going to do this. I am a staunch, firm other side of the table person. I worked in restaurants for 10 years, and I was always a backline cook, but the servers used to make fun of the people that would come in and sit on the same side. So I just want people to know, if you're a same side person, that's cool. You do you, but just know that the people in the kitchen are having a good laugh about it.
I think we all make fun of those people. I mean, to be honest, when I see them, I'm like, gotta be a first date. It's gotta be like a first, or you are in like month 1 of a relationship and you're just like trying to do that. But like the only scenario where I could see myself sitting next to my wife on a date is like, actually, I wouldn't even call it a date, is if we're with another couple or something of that sort. Like,
yeah, sure.
Maybe something like that. But if it's one-on-one, that's just weird. That's the way I would take it. Alex, what about you? What's your take on that?
I need my space. I don't like sitting all crunched up next to somebody. Miles actually said that he likes sitting next to the person and said it's easier to have a conversation. I just disagree. I just think Miles is a weird cat and he just likes to be weird about everything. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because some of the comments on this are just too funny. And the best comment to me was sent to me via direct message. It says, @EagleMist. I feel like for you, Miles, it would be easier to sit behind them so when you stab them in the back, they don't see it coming. Felt like that was a pretty good bar right there.
People are crafty.
Spitting on a tee for you right there. Sitting next to a 7-footer also sounds awful. So sorry to Miles's girlfriend, but yeah, that doesn't sound enjoyable to me either.
And I don't know about how you guys are, but like I'm a very elbowy cutter. Like if it's a steakhouse or something like that, and I'm doing this. My wife would not want to be near me.
No, not at all. And you're just going to leave all that open real estate on the other side. I mean, we're just going to be on top of each other while the other side has plenty of room. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
All right. Well, that's all the fun stuff we have. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us on this episode. We can check all of your great work out in the mornings from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on 107.5 The Fan. And of course, 107.5thefan.com. Written work as well, right? Anything else I need to plug for you?
No, I greatly appreciate it. And most importantly, Derek Schultz now has informed me that I would get made fun of if I were to sit next to my wife. So that is duly noted. So thank you, Derek, for that.
No problem at all, buddy. I'm here to help. I'm here to serve.
See you guys.
All right. See y'all. We will talk to y'all tomorrow with Derek Schultz. Full episode's coming out right after this.